Good afternoon. Welcome to Storytime on Facebook Live. I have special guests today. My son Quentin and my daughter Madeline Wave, say hi, are going to be here for Storytime. I'm going to read two stories today, The Crayon Box That Talked, and then followed by A Bad Case of the Stripes. So we're going to start with The Crayon Box That Talked, a fan favorite, I'm told. While we were walking in a toy store the other day, today, I overheard a crayon box with many things to say. I don't like red and yellow, said Green. And Green said, no, nor do I. And no one here likes orange, but no one knows just why. We are a box of crayons that doesn't get along, said Blue to all the others. Something here is wrong. Well, I brought that crayon box of crayons and took it home with me and laid out all the colors so the crayons could all see. They watched me as I colored with red and blue and green, and black and white and orange, and every color in between. They watched as green became the grass and blue became the sky, and yellow sun was shining bright on white clouds drifting by. Colors changing as they touched, becoming something new. They watched me as I colored. They watched till I was through. And when I finally finished, I began to walk away, and as I did, the crayon box had something more to say. I do like red, said yellow, and green said, so do I, and blue, you were terrific, so high up in the sky.
What was in the video?
We are a box of crayons, each one of us unique, but when we get together, the picture is complete. And that's the end of that story. Yay. That was cute. All right, and our next story is A Bad Case of the Stripes. Yay. Camilla creamed like lima beans, but she never ate them. All of her friends hated lima beans, and she wanted to fit in. Camilla was always worried about what other people thought of her. Today she was fretting even more than usual. It was the first day of school and she couldn't decide what to wear. There were so many people to impress. She tried on 42 outfits, but none seemed quite right. She put on a pretty red dress and looked in the mirror. Then she screamed. Her mother ran into the room and she screamed too. Oh my heavens! You are completely covered with stripes. This was certainly true. Camilla was striped from head to toe. She looked like a rainbow. Mrs. Cream felt Camilla's forehead. Do you feel all right? She asked. I feel fine, Camilla answered, but just look at me. You get back into bed this instant, her mother ordered. You're not going to school today. Camilla was relieved. She didn't want to miss the first day of school, but she was afraid of what the other kids would say, and she had no idea what to wear with all those crazy stripes. That afternoon, Mr. Bumble came to examine Camilla. Most extraordinary, he exclaimed. I've never seen anything like it. Are you having any coughing, sneezing, runny nose, aches, pains, chills, hot flashes, dizziness, drowsiness, shortness of breath, or uncomfortable twitching?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Could you please repeat it?
Excuse me, Siri, be quiet. No, Camilla told him, I'm fine. Well then, Mr. Bumble said, turning to Mrs. Cream, I don't see any reason why she shouldn't go to school tomorrow. Here's some ointment that should help clear up those stripes in a few days. If it doesn't, you know where to reach me. And off he went. The next day was a disaster. Everyone at school laughed at Camilla. They called her Camilla Crayon and the Night of the Living Lollipop. She tried her best to act as if everything were normal, but when the class said the Pledge of Allegiance, her stripes turned red, white, and blue, and she broke out into stars.
Oh, I get it.
The other kids thought that was great. One yelled, let's see some purple polka dots. Sure enough, Camilla turned all purple polka dotty. Someone else shouted checkerboard, and then patterns of squares covered her skin. Soon everyone was calling out different shapes and colors, and poor Camilla was changing faster than you can change channels on a TV. That night, Mr. Harms, the school principal, called. I'm sorry, we're going to have to ask you to keep Camilla home from school. She's just too much of a distraction, and I just getting calls from other parents. They're afraid those stripes may be contagious. Camilla was so embarrassed. She couldn't believe that 2 days ago everyone liked her, and now nobody wanted to be in the same room with her. Her father tried to make her feel better. Is there anything I can do, sweetheart? He asked. No, thank you, sighed Camilla. What she really wanted was for a nice plate of lima beans, but she had been laughed at enough for one day. Poor Camilla. Madeline, stop moving, please. Well, yes, I see, said Dr. Bumble, as he mumbled with Mr. Cream phone the next day. I think she'd better see the specialist. We'll be right over. About an hour later, Dr. Bumble arrived with 4 people in long white coats. He introduced them to Mr. and Mrs. Cream. This is Dr. Gropp, Dr. Sponge, Dr. Cricket, and Dr. Young. Then the specialist went to work. They squeezed and jabbed and tapped and tested. It was very uncomfortable. Well, it's not the mumps or the measles, definitely not chickenpox or sunburn. Try these, said the specialist. They each handed her a bottle with different colored pills. Take one of each before bed. Then they filed out the front door, and followed Mr. Bumble. What?
I said Madeline.
That night, Camilla took her medicine. It was awful. When she woke up the next morning, she did not feel different. But when she got dressed, her clothes didn't fit right. She looked in the mirror, and there, standing back at her, was a giant multicolored pill with her face on it. Dr. Bumble rushed over as soon as Mrs. Cream called, but this time, instead of specialists, he brought experts. Dr. Gord and Dr. Mellon were the finest scientific minds in the land. Once again, Camilla was poked and prodded, looked at and listened to. The experts wrote down lots of numbers, then they huddled together and whispered. Dr. Gord finally spoke. It must be a virus, he announced with authority. Suddenly, fuzzy little virus balls appeared all over Camilla. Or possibly some form of bacteria, said Mr. Mellon. Out popped squiggly little bacteria tails. Or it could be a fungus, added Dr. Gord. Instantly, Camilla was covered with different colored fungus splotches. The experts looked at Camilla and then at each other. We need to go over these numbers again back at the lab, Dr. Gord explained. We'll call you when we know something. But so the experts didn't have a clue. Much less secure. By now, the TV news had found out about Camilla. Reporters from every channel were outside her house telling the story of the bizarre case of the incredible changing kid. Soon a huge crowd was camped out on her front lawn. The Creams were swamped with all kinds of remedies from psychologists, allergists, herbologists, nutritionists, psychics, an old medicine man, a guru, and even a veterinarian. Each so-called cure only added to poor Camilla's strange appearance until it was hard to even recognize her. She sprouted roots and berries and crystals and feathers and a long furry tail, but nothing worked. One day, a woman called herself an environmental therapist claimed she could cure Camilla. Close your eyes, she said, breathe deeply and become one with your room. I wish you hadn't said that, Camilla groaned. Slowly she started to melt into the walls of her room. Her bed became her mouth, her nose was a dresser, and 2 paintings were her eyes. The therapist screamed and ran from the house. What are we going to do? Cried Mrs. Cream. It just keeps getting worse and worse. She began to sob. At that moment, Mr. Cream heard a quiet little knock at the door. He opened it, and there stood an old lady who was just as plump and sweet as a strawberry. Excuse me, she said brightly, but I think I can help. She went into Camilla's room and looked around. My goodness, she said in shake. What we have here is a bad case of stripes. One of the worst I've ever seen. She pulled a container of small green beans from her bag. Here, she said. These might do the trick. Are those magic beans? Asked Mrs. Cream. Oh, my, no, replied the old woman. There's no such thing. They're just plain old lima beans. I'll bet you like some, wouldn't you? Asked Camilla. She asked Camilla. Camilla wanted a big heaping plateful of lima beans more than just about anything, but she still was afraid to admit it. Yuck, she said. No one likes lima beans, especially me. Oh, dear, the old woman said sadly. I guess I was wrong about you. She put the beans back in her bag and started toward the door. Camilla watched the old woman walk away. The beans would taste so good, and being laughed at for eating them was nothing compared to what she'd been going through. She finally couldn't stand it. Wait! The truth is I really love lima beans. I thought so, said the old woman with a smile. She took a handful of beans and popped them into Camilla's mouth. Mmm, said Camilla. Suddenly, the branches, feathers, and squiggly tails began to disappear. Then the whole room swirled around. When it stopped, there stood Camilla, and everything was back to normal. I'm cured, she shouted. Yes, said the old woman. I knew the real you was in there somewhere. She patted Camilla on the head. Then she went outside and vanished into the crowd. Afterward, Camilla wasn't quite the same. Some of the kids at school said she was weird, but she didn't care a bit. She ate all the lima beans she wanted, and she never had even a touch of stripes again.
We should sleep off.
She did have a striped bow. Do you see that? Right there. All right, that's story time for today. I hope you enjoyed. It will be back tomorrow with Woof Woof, Madeline, Quentin, maybe a few other guests, and maybe some different readers. Have a great day, everyone.